Hello. Welcome to the stream. Let me get my ducks in a row here. It is time to record another podcast. I just came back from recording my outdoor podcast called The Walk. And it is about, 5:15 p.m. when I'm recording this. So that still gives me about an hour to record my other podcast. And then I'll be done podcasting-wise for the rest of the week. Well, actually, that's not true, because I always record another podcast for the patrons. So that's going to be about Star Wars, because tomorrow is the finale of Andor. So obviously, that's going to be the main theme of my Story Secrets podcast for my patrons over on patreon.com/Father Roderick. I'm going to quickly post a link to this live stream on my socials so we can get a bigger community. Always fun. And I was hoping to do a live episode yesterday, but I was so wiped out because I went to Dutch Comic Con this weekend for 2 days. And I've been running around like a madman for 2 days because I was also filming a documentary there. And yesterday, I paid the price. I was so wiped out. There was no way in the world that I could work. Let's see. So we've got our Discord people, of course. My patrons also have access to my Discord server. And that's usually where I make the announcements that I'm live. Although most of them actually do know that if I'm live, it's usually around this time. So let me just go here to the announcements channel. Oh. Hello. Why is it starting up OBS? Go away, OBS. I don't need no OBS. Okay. Oh, wait. Maybe I should... I'm live on YouTube. Okay. Boom. And, all right, let's see. Where else am I going to put this? Mastodon? Yeah, sure, why not? Mastodon, where is the big elephant? Here we go, explore. Okay. I'm live on YouTube. Recording my podcast. There we go. A little bit of a promo text. I actually kind of always hesitate to just do like top down information, like it's almost PR this, because Mastodon obviously is all about conversation. But I just hope I don't have that many followers anyway, so I hope they still check out the link. Let's see, and then maybe Facebook, and then I'm done. Okay, bericht maken. It says in the Dutch. For some reason, Facebook on my computer keeps switching back to Dutch, even though I always say no, English is good. Oh well. There we go. Now, what weather is it over where you live? Over here, it's really winter. It's not snowing, but it is cold. And dark, especially dark. I cannot wait for for Christmas, because then after Christmas, of course, the days will get longer again. This is such a dark. I also like the coziness of the kind of the long evening. So it's a great time for reading. I'm reading a ton of books. I'm gonna review one of those books in this episode of the show, and it's a great time to watch TV with a cup of hot chocolate. Although I never really make hot chocolate because I stopped drinking milk, and I've noticed that hot chocolate with soy milk is not very good. The live streams are also about the conversation. It's so true, but when I'm recording the show, it's kind of just me talking into the microphone. But oh well. Hello, David, Margot, Michiel, Liz, Palamides, Jeremy. Nice weather in the Bahamas. Ooh, very good. Palamides, what was your first name again? I always forget. I get so confused with these screen names. I apologize. And I already have trouble remembering names. Screen names make it like a double challenging. Sunny and 7 degrees Celsius in Indiana. Thank you for converting that to Celsius. I appreciate it. We are here in this imperial part of the world. Hey, JB from LA, the beautiful, beautiful city of LA that I miss so much. I'm not missing the traffic, but I loved it there. Oh, Gary, thank you so much, Gary. Sorry, I forgot. Cold, windy, and rainy in the UK, says Michiel. That's redundant. You just have to tell me that you're in the UK and the weather forecast comes with that, right? There's no need to specify. Almond milk is better than soy milk for most things. Is that so? But I thought almonds, like growing almonds, was also like more dramatic, requires more water. It's a little bit more of a footprint than soy. Although I'm not sure. But yeah, it's possible that it's better. We had a couple of very cold days. Today is much nicer, sunny, and 55. Ooh, 13 degrees Celsius. That's almost, you can walk around without a coat. Lovely. Gerald or Gary. Oat milk. I tried oat milk in my coffee a while ago, and I didn't like it. It was a bit bitter. It didn't have that creaminess that I want in my cappuccino. But it maybe also, it depends on the brand. And you've got the sweetened version and like the non-flavored version. I don't know. I used up my oat milk for pancakes this afternoon because I cannot get used to the taste. But in pancakes, you don't notice it. Hey, Malou. Also from LA. Nice. Nice. It tastes better, the almond milk. Yeah, maybe. Almonds require something like 4 liters of water per almond. Yeah, I read something like that. I was like, maybe that's not the best alternative. It still beats dairy, probably, but most vegetable alternatives are better than dairy, and because just yeah. But I actually saw an article that said that soy milk is probably the best alternative, especially because here in the Netherlands, we grow our own soy. We're not asking foreign countries to get rid of their rainforests for soy. And, most soy production that is so destructive is for meat, is to feed cattle, which is insane. Oh, you want, yes, milk in the tea. That's also something. Yeah, I missed that. I don't drink tea very often here. And when I drink, so I drink coffee, but I'm the worst. I drink instant coffee. because regular coffee is so expensive, and I only drink 1 cup, maximum 2 cups in the morning, small cups like that. So I just use coffee creamer. And I mean, I do love my real coffee when I'm in Italy. There's nothing that beats the cappuccino. But most of the time, coffee is just to get that extra boost of energy in the morning. And yeah, I've gotten used to the instant coffee and the creamer. Actually, the creamer does make the instant coffee taste better. I know, it's like swearing in the cathedral, but there you go. What is the reason to stop drinking milk? Well, it's mostly because of the destructive effects of the dairy industry, or not just dairy industry, but meat industry in the Netherlands. We're dealing with a massive environmental problem right now, which is like everybody's talking about it. We have way too much cattle. And milk production is a factor. Meat production is a huge factor, and it destroys our environment right now. So the government is like, they need to reduce it to kind of protect the biodiversity, and like whole parts of the Netherlands are now covered in grass, and it's not even natural grass. It's like this very, very special, like super resistant, tough grass that comes from England, I think. And none of it is native. And everybody grew up with thinking that cows, and how can you have a more natural environment than cows in a meadow? Well, it turns out that the meadows and the cows are not the same as they used to be 50 years ago. It's all like this hyper efficient industry, and it's causing a lot of issues right now in the Netherlands. And so that is why a large part of the population is now looking for alternatives, and not to mention, of course, the rising prices. Right now, vegetarian alternatives are, and this is new, they are cheaper than dairy. Dairy was always subsidized, still is subsidized, and yet oat milk is now cheaper, and it used to be like twice the price. But it's like, so it's kind of balancing itself out. Meat is I never ever buy meat anymore full price, like the regular price. I always wait for some discount, and even then, I just use a tiny bit in my food, but it's just too expensive, and it's bad for the environment. So that's why in the Netherlands everybody's looking for alternatives, and that's a good thing. It's not always the same, so it requires sometimes to adapt. And some people just like their coffee black. I've never gotten used to that. I tried many times in the past, but no. Coffee, like tea. Most people actually drink tea just like tea. No. For me, it needs milk and it needs sugar. It's blame the Scots, because when I was in Scotland, that's how I got addicted to tea with milk, and I never want to switch back. Hey, I need to get going, otherwise I'm gonna lose my advantage of being here in front of the microphone in time. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. It is very cold in the Netherlands. Winter is not just coming, it's just here. It's cold. It's freezing during the night, and here in my little office where I'm recording my podcast, it's equally cold because I don't have the central heating on, but hopefully I can still warm your heart with a new podcast. I want to welcome a couple of new members to our Patreon community. We've got Rambling Redshirt, Will Myers, Lauren Heiseny, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and Daimos. And these 4 people have joined this community that helps me to do this work, believes in my mission, and is also able to chip in financially. If you are not supporting me yet, and that's the majority of you, lots of you are listening to this podcast every week, and some of you have been listening for years, but only, I think, about 5% of my listeners, maybe even less, are supporting my work through Patreon. So I hope that more of you can join that Patreon community for your own good, because it's an amazing community. You get access to the Discord server, which is the place where we hang out every single day. It's so much fun. It's where I pitch my ideas, where I get feedback, where you can ask questions and just hang out for fun. It's a lovely community. We just started a session of D&D with the part of our Discord community, and it's something I've always dreamed of and never thought I would live to see the day that I could play D&D with friends from all over the world. Plus, if you become a patron, you get an exclusive podcast called Story Secrets, where I dive into the deeper meanings of the stories that you love. Television shows, science fiction, fantasy, Star Wars. I'm of course going to record an in-depth episode about the last 3 episodes of Star Wars Andor. Tomorrow, I'm recording this on Tuesday. Tomorrow is going to be the season's finale. It's going to be epic. I'm sure they've done wonders with that series. And so I'll do a long, and these podcasts are long. They're like an hour and a half is not an exception. So you get a lot more Father Roderick as a patron than you would get by just subscribing to my regular shows. Not that you're not welcome. I love it that you listen. I really appreciate the privilege of your time, as I often say. But a big thank you to those of you that are able to help out, and for those of you that are now rushing over to patreon.com/Father Roderick and signing up for a monthly micro donation. Also, a big thank you to Tiffany Lewandowski and Galareth for upping their tier. Some of you are, have a little bit more financial margin sometimes, or they heard me talk about a new project that I want to realize, and they want to help out a little bit more. I'm always very, very thankful for those of you that are able to move from one tier to another. Let's talk about the news.
Do you know what's going on? This is what's happening in your world.
Face it, Catholics rule. We got Boston, South America, the good part of Ireland, and we're making serious inroads in Mozambique, baby.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
I had such an amazing weekend. And we live in dark times, literally, because it gets dark very early. It's winter. But there's also so much going on in the world. We've got worries about the ongoing war in Ukraine and the impact it has on global economy. We've got these reports of deadly shootings and violence and intolerance. We've got the whole Twitter drama and the political worries that some of us have. Sometimes you just want to step away from all of that drama and just enjoy the friendship of like-minded geeks. And that's what I did this weekend when I went to Dutch Comic Con in Utrecht, the city where I was in seminary and where I was ordained a priest. And every year, twice a year actually, they organize the Dutch version of Comic-Con. Of course, the original Comic-Con from San Diego is a lot bigger than this, but still, nevertheless, for a tiny little country like the Netherlands, 47,000 visitors, that's quite big, actually, and it's turning into one of the bigger conventions in my country. And of course, as a geek, as a fellow geek, I love it that it's growing. And it's like this year was even bigger than last year. It wasn't last year, but last time I was going to Comic-Con, that was 2 years ago, before the pandemic. And now it was the first Comic-Con that felt like a regular old-fashioned, good, big, crowded Comic-Con, lots and lots of cosplayers. And I had a blast going around, doing the rounds with my camera, interviewing people, filming a documentary. And it's always such a joy to encounter new friends and to meet old friends again. It's just amazing what happens. It felt very, very much like the week that I spent in LA, in Anaheim, for this Star Wars celebration. But here it's even, it's wider. It's not just Star Wars. It's about all sorts of geekery. And I was able to see a couple of very, very cool actors, some of which I've always admired since I was a child. Like Lou Ferrigno was there, the original Incredible Hulk on TV. Dan Fogler was here from The Walking Dead and Fantastic Beasts, and Jenna Coleman from Doctor Who. And as always, it was also the actor who plays Arrow. Great guy. I've only seen like half of the first season of Arrow, so I'm not very familiar with the Arrowverse. But the guy was just such a cool, nice guy and entertaining. All of these guests were really, really good stories. I talk a lot more about Comic-Con and why I went there and what kind of conversations I had there on this week's episode of The Walk. And for me, it was another confirmation that this is my field of where I play. This is what I do. I'm a priest and I'm a geek, and I want to connect to this culture that is also my culture, because this is where I can build bridges. This is where I can meet people where they are, and the stories that they tell are so close to the stories that have that feed me, the stories of my faith, and having that presence there opens all sorts of opportunities to connect with people that otherwise would never come to me as a parish priest. But that's not a problem. I'll just go to them. So if you want to hear more about that, check out my latest episode of The Walk.
How do you not like movies?
They're predictable. Like, the guy gets the girl and that kid sees dead people and Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Not liking movies is like not liking puppies.
They're fine. I just get bored and never make it to the end.
You know, you need a movie education. You need a movication. Now I'm gonna give it to you.
This day, November the 22nd, 33 years ago, a tiny, small, insignificant movie hit the theaters all across the world called Back to the Future 2. Marty McFly traveled in the DeLorean time machine all the way to October the 20-something, was it the 25th? Of 2015, which back then was decades away. And that movie, of course, the sequel to the original Back to the Future, and then the prequel to Back to the Future 3, became part of a very much loved, revered, and even missed franchise that has impacted the lives of people of my generation, but continues to be such an iconic trilogy that any geek wants to check out. And these movies really hold up well. Maybe not always the language that is used. There's this one moment where Marty, who travels back in time to the 50s, that like back then was the age of, or the time that most of the parents of my generation grew up. But he still uses the slang, the words, the common language of young people in the 80s. And so he meets a younger version of Doc Brown, and he reacts. Back then, you used to say, "Oh, that's heavy. That's so heavy." And then Doc is like, "What do you mean? What is heavy? What do you talk about weight?" And now when you hear that kind of language, of course, to us that sounds like something that is so much part of the vocabulary of young people, like from decades ago. So now it's antique. And our language today is full of words that 33 years ago were just not part of our vernacular. It's not what we spoke. We wouldn't understand it. This is what happens in the world. Our language, our culture changes. The way we talk, the way we address, the whole pronoun thing that is currently so important to a lot of people. Even 5 years ago, that would be unthinkable that you would talk about someone using the plural, they and them. So this is how language changes with culture, changes with new priorities, new ways of expressing yourself. And 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, language will still be completely different. And it's always hard to predict what that future will look like. I remember seeing Back to the Future 2 when I was still in seminary. I was 21 years old. I had entered seminary at the age of 18, and I wasn't in the Netherlands. I was, of course, a student from the Netherlands, but I did the first half of my seminary studies in Belgium, in the French part of Belgium, in a city called Louvain-la-Neuve. So New Louvain. Louvain is a medieval university city. One of the oldest universities in the world. Very, very good reputation. But, as you know, in Belgium, there are 3 official languages. There is Dutch, Flemish, there's French, and there's German. Not everybody knows that, but German is one of the 3 official languages that is spoken in that country. And, as you can imagine, these languages are also linked to social groups, and not all those social groups are equal. There's always been usually the Flemish part was rich, very influential in politics. The French part is more the poorer part of the country, or at least traditionally. Things have changed over time. So there's also a bit of rivalry, tension between those language groups. And at one point, they decided to split up the University of Louvain in 2 separate towns. There's the old original town of Louvain, and then they created a French-speaking equivalent of that university in Louvain-la-Neuve. And there was also an international seminary, and that's where I studied philosophy. Well, at the university, and I lived in the seminary. And so I studied there for 4 years, did my master's in philosophy, did 1 year of theology in Brussels at the institute that was organized by the Jesuits. And then I came back to the Netherlands. So I was 21 years old. I had seen the original Back to the Future, I think when I was still in high school, probably. I don't recall exactly when that came out. But the sequel, and I was a huge fan of the first movie. I loved it. It was just one of my favorite movies. I remember after seeing that, I was like, this is just as impactful as Star Wars was. This is just one of those rare movie franchises that comes along where you know you're going to love this movie for the rest of your life. And so when Back to the Future 2 came out, I was desperate to see it. But I was in seminary. We didn't have there was a movie theater in the university city, but they had usually these art house movies. It was a bit highbrow. They didn't have the big blockbusters. And so in order to see a Hollywood movie, we had to go to a small town. It was almost like a village. And I happened to also do my driving license, my driving lessons there. And so I drove there with another student, and there was a small theater. It was really, really small, maybe 100 people max that could fit into that. They had just one was almost a room where they would project the movies. But they did have Back to the Future. It was in December. So the movie in the US premiered on November the 22nd, and it took about a month. This was actually quite fast. Normally, you would sometimes have to wait several months before a movie would be shown in Europe. But this movie premiered in Belgium in December. It was right before Christmas time, probably. And it was dubbed in French, which was very common in a number of countries in Europe. So in Germany, they dub everything. In France, they dub everything. In Italy, they dub everything. In Spain, they do the same. Portugal also. In Poland, it's even different. At the time, now things have changed. They dub the movies, and sometimes they use subtitles or captions. But for a long time in Poland, they would narrate the movie. So they wouldn't have the budget to dub it, but there would just be this one guy who would describe the action and translate the conversations on the spot. So you would have this conversation between Marty McFly and then and Doc Brown, and then you would just hear this voice in Polish say, Doc Brown tells Marty McFly that he needs a gazillion gigawatts to power the time machine, to which then Marty McFly says, this is heavy. Doc Brown replies, what do you mean heavy? Why do you talk about weight? And it would just be this kind of droning voice. It's one guy just translating on the spot. So I saw that second movie, the second part of Back to the Future, entirely in French, no subtitles. And I had been studying in French for 2 years, about 2.5 years. I had learned French in school, in high school, but it's similar to if you live in the U.S., you may have had some Spanish, right? So learning another language in school, you can read it, you can kind of understand it, you can say a few things, but you cannot really have a regular conversation, let alone talk about time travel. And so imagine me, I'm sitting there in the theater, and the movie starts with the Doc Brown, and this was still before the age of everybody having VHS recorders, and so I had the last time I saw that movie was years before, so I didn't really even realize that they had replaced the actress who plays Marty McFly's girlfriend. It was a totally different actress. I had no recollection of who played her in the first movie. They recreated the scenes at the end of Back to the Future 1 for the beginning of Back to the Future 2. And of course, you know what happens. Like Doc Brown arrives with the kind of souped up DeLorean that now can fly and runs on banana peels with the Mr. Fusion. And then ultimately, of course, they fly to the future, which at the time, with 2015, oh my gosh, that was like, I cannot imagine what the world will look like 2015. It's like, it was an eternity away, because of course Marty's children were in trouble, and then Biff also flies to the future, steals the almanac, the sports almanac, and then takes over the world and creates a separate timeline. This was one of those first movies that I have seen where you would have that alternate timeline idea that is currently so overused in movies, where you have the multiverse, right? Marvel is all about the multiverse right now. And it's basically all this myriad of timelines that exist parallel to one another, separate, but also parallel and similar. But every time someone takes a decision one way or another, that creates a fork in the road, basically. And so at one point in Back to the Future 2, you've got that explanation of what is truly going on, and Doc draws it out on a blackboard to explain it to Marty, and of course also to us, and then says, well, we have to somehow go back in time, because this timeline where Biff has taken over Hill Valley, this is the wrong future. We need to somehow go back and prevent him from getting the almanac and then restore the reality, not really taking into account that the reality that Marty McFly returns to when he has visited his parents and had them connect with one another in the 50s is already an alternate timeline. He doesn't return to his own timeline. He returns to an alternate future that he himself helped to create. Now, all those explanations went straight over my head because, of course, it was in French. It was dubbed. And this was only my third year in French. Over time, of course, I've learned French pretty well and became almost like a second native language. That's the advantage, that I kind of made the switch. Like one day I was still speaking Dutch in school, and then I went to seminary, and for 5 years I've only spoken French. And the only few times that I spoke Dutch was when I returned home or when I had, family or friends on the phone. But that was very rare. So after 5 years, I could just switch back and forth between Dutch and French without even having to think about it. This was not the case 33 years ago. And then because French needs more words than English, they also spoke very fast. And so you would see Marty McFly's mouth move and say utter a few words in American English, and then in French, it was this whole lot of words that had to fit in in these few seconds, It's like, mais Doc Brown, c'est impossible que nous retournions vers le passé parce que la machine temporelle ne fonctionne plus et nous avons besoin de 4000 gigawatts pour retourner à Hill Valley. What are they saying? I remember half of the movie, I was my head hurt at the end. It's oh, it's so straining to listen to this. even nowadays, when I watch movies in other languages, mostly English on Netflix or whatever, I very often will turn on the subtitles or the captions because it's more relaxing to be able to read and listen at the same time. And I will turn on the English captions, not the Dutch captions. Although we're very used. We never dub movies in the Netherlands, just children's movies. So Disney will have dubbed versions, but most of the movies are subtitled. Everything on TV is subtitled. So it becomes second nature. I don't even realize that I'm reading subtitles. If you're not used to that, if you're in a country where everything you watch is in your native language, like in English, if you're an American or someone from the UK or Ireland or Scotland or whatever, or when you're always used, like in Germany, you're used to always watching dubbed versions, it's very hard to read subtitles because you think, but I have to read. How can I see what's going on in the movie? Well, the opposite is also very hard when you're trying to grasp what is going on with all this time travel and there are no subtitles and you have to play it by ear and everybody's talking so fast. I had the same experience in Italy many years later when I was watching some of those movies in Italian, like Harry Potter in Italian. Oh my gosh. Oh, è tanto difficile di parlare sulla magia in un'altra lingua. And plus, what they also did with Harry Potter is they did like Italianized versions of all, like Hogwarts is not called Hogwarts in Italian. It's a different name. All these professors have different names. So it's like, what is happening? I don't recognize anything in this language. Now, I've always been fascinated by Back to the Future because, and especially by the second movie, because it showed us a possible future. Like when you have to think about what will the world look like 33 years from now? Or, well, in this case, it was 2015, which for us is now 7 years ago. Do you realize that? Like the future that Marty McFly goes to, that seemed so far away when you first watched Back to the Future, is now already like ancient past. There are kids now on TikTok that weren't even born yet in 2015. It's so funny. So you're like, okay, flying cars, sure. Like that's a no-brainer when you think about the future, the Jetsons, like all these movies. Same thing with Blade Runner. That is also taking place in a future that for us now is the past. And you've got flying cars. It's Coruscant on steroids. None of that has materialized. Flying like hoverboards. I still am surprised that skateboarding is a thing because in the 80s, skateboarding was massive, think of Tony Hawk and all that sort of stuff. But skateboarding is still popular. I did not predict that. I was like, okay, come on, skateboarding. That's it's popular now, but kids in the future, they won't use skateboards. But anyway, so, and I was wrong about that. 3D movies, like you see the whole like Jaws, what is it, Jaws 23, and they've got that holographic projection of a shark as an advertisement. And Marty McFly is like really scared. Well, 3D movies at the time, that was just like you would have to wear the red and green glasses. 3D was not a thing. So imagining a future where 3D movies would be the only way to watch movies, it sounded so super futuristic. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hope that will one day. I will even watch Jaws 23 if I can watch it in 3D. Please, pretty please let that become a reality. And it became a reality. We got 3D TVs. We have 3D movies. And then it went away again. Like I still have my original 3D TV. It's in the other room, not in the studio. I put it in the studio. And I still have my PlayStation 3 that I hold on to because it can play 3D movies. And I still have it's the LG version of 3D, so it was passive glasses. So it still works. But nobody sells these TVs anymore, and you can't get those 3D movies on Blu-ray anymore. So I bought up all the 3D Blu-rays that I could find, knowing that this technology was going away. Now, maybe there will be a resurgence now that VR and AR is making a comeback. Apple is, of course, developing their AR system, which is going to be launched hopefully next year. And I wouldn't be surprised if that can breathe new life into 3D movies. If Apple TV can, distribute 3D movies to these, whatever they are called, Apple glasses, count me in. I will subscribe to any service that gives me 3D movies because it's just so awesome. I love 3D in the cinema, even though it's just, of course, mostly done to extort more money from you, that and popcorn. But I don't care. I love 3D. I love the immersion. So that was one of the things that I was super excited about when it actually materialized. It's like, okay, so the only thing that I still want is flying cars. We never got those. But there's something else that was so magical and is still so magical about Back to the Future. Why do these 3 movies still appeal not just to old guys like me? It's not just nostalgia. There's also something that I love about these movies, and it has to do with the whole premise of the story, where your decisions can literally make or break the future. Who is Marty McFly? He's considered a loser, He's just this kid, and his parents are, not ideal and everything. But the story, it's a fairy tale that tells you that you can change the future if you stand up against bullies, if you are courageous. And Marty McFly is a beautiful hero's journey of someone who's a very insecure kid, and he gets challenged, and you call me chicken, and then he gets beat up by Biff, and despite all the odds, he manages to create a new future for himself, for his parents, and for his progeny. And there is something, I think, it has all these questions that you ask yourself from time to time. What would my life look like had I married that girl? Had I taken this job instead of this job? If I had never discovered podcasting, what would I have been doing now? If Star Wars would have never been made, what other franchise would I be a fan of? Stuff like that. But also when it comes to your own future, when you think about where will I be 30 years from now? That's a scary question. Like 30 years from now, if I am still alive, I'll be 84 years old. When I saw Back to the Future 2 in theaters, that is a longer amount. That's a longer time ago than I will have years ahead of me. It's frightening, So that also gives weight to what I do today. The decisions I make are going to determine what my future will be 30 years from now, just like it is for Marty McFly. And, well, I don't even know if I'm going to live to see the day. I hope, of course, and I tried. But that, for instance, it means I want to live a healthy life. I want to make sure I can deal with stress, that I focus on what is really important, because I have no time to waste. 33 years. To me, I still remember 33 years ago when I saw that movie in theaters as if it was just a few years ago. It's 33 years ago. The next couple, I don't care that much about flying cars, and yes, I love how much technology is advancing, and I'm excited to be part of these golden years of filmmaking, and to also to be a part of that television industry. I love the creative aspects of that, but I also realize that that's not ultimately that important. I want my life to contribute something to the lives of others. I want to make sure that in 33 years, I can look back on my life and think, hey, I made the right decisions. I don't have to go back to the past to fix the future, because the future is what I hoped it would be because I did the right thing. It doesn't mean that it's all going to be ideal. When you're 84 years old, 33 years from now, or 30 years from now, let's not exaggerate. It's you get older, you get all sorts of inconveniences, but that's just part of life. But what I hope is that I can be happy about about the future that I created based on what I do today. If that makes any sense. It always gets complicated when you think about time travel, doesn't it?
Catholics rock!
And it's time for a short visit to the Peculiar Bunch. This is the place where you can ask anything you always wanted to know about Catholics, but you are afraid to ask.
Catholics can be a peculiar bunch. No meat on Friday.
Oh, meat? What do they eat? Light bulbs?
And as a Catholic, I'm heading into a brand new year. This upcoming Sunday marks the beginning of Advent, which is the beginning of a new liturgical year.
Man, you guys got more crazy rules than Blockbuster Video.
So I'd like to share with you a little bit about Advent and just a refresher of what it is about and why it's important. It is similar to, you could say, to Lent. The Catholic Church and tradition has two big major times of preparation. If you count Pentecost in a certain way, even the Easter season, Easter time, 50 days is also a time of preparation, but it's less. That is also more a continuation of the joy of Easter, and less kind of this more meditative time of preparation and penance that is associated with Advent to a lesser extent, and definitely with the time of Lent. So what is Advent all about? It's 4 Sundays, not exactly 4 weeks, but definitely 4 Sundays before the celebration of the birth of Christ at Christmas on the 25th of December. And because the 25th of December is a fixed date, it doesn't change. That can be a Sunday, can be a Wednesday, can be a Tuesday. That is why Advent is variable when it comes to the total duration. Sometimes you would have the 4th Sunday of Advent, and then the next day it's Christmas, or the 24th. Sometimes it's a bit disconcerting, and it's almost like, it's barely 3.5 weeks. But the whole idea is that you take some time to prepare for a big celebration, and that a celebration has more impact if you actually prepare for it, instead of just like, oh, and now it's Christmas. This is why Advent is a time of longing. It's not meant to be like you use Advent to celebrate Christmas for 4 weeks, which is kind of what the world does nowadays. We tend to, it's like Black Friday, right? That was usually the day after Thanksgiving in the United States. If you're listening to this, by the way, after Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. But Black Friday used to be this one day after Thanksgiving where a lot of stores would have massive sales. It's called Black Friday, right? So it's one day. Now, in the Netherlands, they're calling this Black Friday week because we don't have Thanksgiving. So now this week, sometimes it's even started for some shops last week, it's like the weeks of Black Friday. Like, this is so typical. We do that with Christmas as well. And Advent just gobbles up, no pun intended for the turkeys that are listening to this podcast, but Christmas has gobbled up Advent and has robbed it from its meaning, because Advent is all about this looking forward to Christmas and anticipating it by focusing on, well, what is Christmas about? It's about we're seeking the light. So we acknowledge the darkness inside of us. We try to make steps in our faith to eradicate the darkness and embrace the light, so that once we celebrate the birth of Christ, we're fully open for his coming in our lives. So this is super important, I think, at least for Christians, to hold on to that tradition. This is why Advent calendars have a special place in my heart. I had my first Advent calendar as a child because it was gifted to us by, I think, one of our aunts, and it was my how do you say that? So my mother's sister is my my godmother, right? That's how you call it. And so she sent us an advent calendar from the United States. And I remember when we opened it, it came in through the mail. And of course, for us, that was magical. She lives in San Francisco. This is just this faraway country that we only know from the Mickey Mouse Club. It's this land of possibilities. It was. I grew up with a highly romanticized idea of the United States, and so we got this big calendar, and it was bright and colorful, and it had little windows, but more interesting, behind each window that was numbered, there was a chocolate. It was just magical. Every day we would open one of those little doors, and we would eat chocolate, and then we knew that the 25th, number 25, was like 4 times as big as all the other doors. So we knew that there would be a huge chunk of chocolate behind those doors. But what it did was it really helped to get into that countdown mode. Like, it's almost Christmas, it's almost Christmas. And that big piece of chocolate, which turned out to be the Holy Family in chocolate. So I actually ate Mary, Joseph, and little baby Jesus on the day of Christmas. It's a bit weird, but hey, as a child, you don't ask questions when chocolate is involved. But there was this anticipation, and it made that whole time of Advent very, very special. In liturgy also, we have a number of rituals that mark that same countdown. We have the Advent wreath, where you have 4 candles, and so every Sunday we light another candle in addition to the ones that are already burning. We're invited to spend more time in prayer, to give some money to the poor, to go to confession, to all these moments of penance. What we're not asked to do is to live as if we are already celebrating Christmas for 4 weeks. Although I have to say that it's all it's there to help us, right? So it's not forbidden to already put up the Christmas tree. In fact, last year I think I actually put up the Christmas tree right on the first day of Advent, and then every week I would add some stuff. I would add the lights, and then I would add the other decorations. And I listen to Christmas music because, I don't know, it's just a wonderful time. It's the most wonderful time of the year, as a great poet once said. Whatever. So Advent, it's all about the advent of Christ, of course. And in our times where that aspect of Christmas and Advent is so often forgotten, I think it's important for us, at least, to maintain these traditions. You don't have to proselytize and condemn other ways in which people are celebrating this season, but hold on to your own traditions. Try to mark it in one way or another, even if it's just by having an Advent calendar. All right, that's what I wanted to share with you. Let me know in the comments or on Discord how you mark the time of Advent. If you have any particular traditions or family traditions, or maybe in your country there are some specific things that you do during the time of Advent. Maybe I'll talk about it in the next episode as well.
When did you become an expert in thermonuclear astrophysics?
Last night. The packet. The extraction theory papers. Am I the only one who did the reading?
I read a couple of books this past week. One of which I read it in one day. Yesterday, actually. I took a day off after going to Comic-Con. I was so tired. So I spent most of the day behind a computer in Valheim, building my new big farm. So I love to watch the YouTube video channels that are showing you what you can build in Valheim, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to copy that. I love that. So I built a huge building in a little village that we created with a couple of Discord members. And the thing is, I miscalculated, and so I realized after already building for about a day that I was actually building the whole thing in a mirrored version. So what was left in the video is now right in my version of the house. So that was sometimes a bit of a mind warp to duplicate something do it in reverse. Do it in a mirrored version. It was very confusing. But last Monday, I was just building and then listening to the audiobook version of a book that is super popular. It's been in the top 10 list of many bookstores. Even when I went to Comic-Con, there were certain booksellers had piles of this book. It's called I'm Glad My Mom Died, and it's written by Jeanette McCurdy, it's a name I didn't recognize, but apparently she is a Nickelodeon star, which was a child actor. She had a very popular show on Nickelodeon that a lot of young people grew up with. In this book with the strange title, I'm Glad My Mom Died, which is something like, why would you write a book about that with that title? She tells the harrowing story of how she grew up and how her mother managed every single dimension of her existence. The fact that she even got into acting as a child was because she was being pushed by her mother. And the sleeve, the description of the book on the sleeve talks about her overbearing mother, which is an understatement. It is not doing justice to the actual situation. She had a horrible, horrible, narcissistic, abusive mother that when she was 11 years old, even forced her or talked her into extreme calorie restriction that ultimately resulted in her suffering from an eating disorder. And that was only one of her disorders that she got because of the world that she grew up in and the abuse by her mother, and also the abusive television industry that she was thrown into, that treated child actors as tools to make money instead of fragile human beings that they are, that need to be protected, that need to be especially shielded against all the nefarious, the dangerous aspect of that, of fame at a young age and the pressures of being a child star. And it's a difficult read. It's very well written. It's very engaging. It's a page turner. I couldn't stop listening to the audiobook. The actress herself, she's a former actress. She doesn't do acting anymore. She stepped away from it because of her mental health, or to benefit her mental health. She's a very good writer, very good storyteller. I was super impressed. But the book is brutally honest. Sometimes goes into graphic detail. There are a number of sexual encounters that she has that she describes in, for me, way too much detail. But it's also kind of part of the process, I think, that the book is for the author, where it's like basically like, I'm going to tell you as it is, as ugly as it is, as harrowing as it was. But she's writing this book from a place of healing. She has gone in therapy. She is working on healing from everything that she went through, and she's writing the book because she knows that she's not the only victim of this world, of mothers like that. She's writing this for current victims of the same disorders that she suffered from, to give them hope, to tell them that there is a way out, that you can pick yourself up. Well, that's actually what the book doesn't say. The book says you need help. You can't do this alone. And she shows the way by telling brutally honest what she went through. For me, it was a particularly difficult read because it did hit home quite a few times. It got very close to experiences that I've had myself. It also confronted me with the horrors of, again, it's not the first time, it's not the first book, not the first story that does this, with the horrors of child abuse, of abuse of power, of using people and loving things instead of doing what we're called to do, and that is to love people and use things. If you start to use people as if they are tools, disregarding their dignity, their humanity, their fragility, then the horrors are unimaginable. This was a difficult read, and at the same time, I'm so glad I read the book. And I can hardly recommend it to most people, with, of course, the warnings that I gave you before. It's very graphic. It's in some places, so that may be a bit too much for some of you. But what I hope is that this book can help the readers. I hope it's going to be a success because it shows you the mechanisms of this industry. It also shows you the dangers and the damage that narcissistic people can do. And it shows, it's a story of a young woman that most people only know from the glamorous side of things, without realizing that the person that plays these roles is suffering, is going through so much, without anyone noticing, without anyone helping. And it's only, I would say, grace that she was able to climb her way out of that. Let's not forget to mention also the negative role that religion plays in this. She was a member of the Mormon Church, which was also weaponized by her mother at a young age, was also playing tricks on her mind where she confused the Holy Spirit with basically mental disorder. And she was thinking that she was doing what God asked her to do, but in fact, in reality, she was suffering from a mental breakdown. So that's also an important thing to talk about. Religion can also manipulate people, can be used not for what it is actually meant to do, and that is to heal and to help people and to protect. But in the wrong hands, religion can be a horrible weapon to destroy people, to destroy their dignity, to rob them from their freedom. And it's good that we tell these stories as a warning for all of us who have a responsibility and are called to lead in religious organizations, and basically any organization where power is involved. With great power comes great responsibility. This is so much more important than just in Spider-Man's origin story. Something that we need to tell ourselves each and every day. With great power comes great responsibility, and there should always be accountability, whether you're a parent or a priest or a politician or anyone with responsibility. Always look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? Am I using this position or the power that I have or the money that I have, the influence that I have? Do I use it to help people grow, to protect those that are vulnerable and maybe even sick? Or am I using it for my own goals, for my own benefit? And am I really respecting the humanity, the dignity of the people that I work with and that have been entrusted to us? Whenever I go to a convention, whether it is Star Wars Celebration or Comic-Con, I'm always hungry. It's because on days like that, you walk a ton. It's vast. Like 10,000 steps is nothing on a convention day. And so it's important to make sure you eat well. The thing is, I never do when I go to conventions like that. It's also because when I have a camera and I'm hunting for interviews, I forget to take care of myself. I forget to eat, I forget to drink. I just run around like crazy. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, I'm starving. Why didn't I eat? So this weekend, I tried to be a good boy and I made myself some extra sandwiches that I brought along with me, knowing that if I would be on the convention floor, there would only be fast food, which was actually the case. They only sold like French fries, mayonnaise, like fried stuff. Good, tasty, but super unhealthy. And so in order to not be led into temptation, You see, I do listen to Jesus from time to time. I made myself sandwiches. One was with, so if I had had time, I would have made an omelet, because omelet is protein, and that usually fills you up quite well. I can run a couple of hours on a sandwich with an omelet, but I didn't have time that morning because I had to be there very early. And then Sunday, I had to be up early for Mass, and then I had to go to Utrecht, so not much time there. Instead, I used peanut butter as a protein source. But you know what? Peanut butter alone on a sandwich, especially if it's kind of stale and it's been in a box for a couple of hours, it's not very nice. It's a bit dry. So I always try to combine it with something. Of course, classic combination is peanut butter jelly, but peanut butter jelly always gets very messy. And since I'm working with cameras and stuff, I don't want my fingers covered in peanut butter jelly, and then I am not able to wash my hands because there are like huge rows for the bathroom. And so I was like, okay, we're not going to do peanut butter and jelly. What else can I combine with peanut butter? Chocolate paste or hazelnut paste. I love that combination, by the way. It's like peanut, what is the Reese's peanut butter something, that the stuff that people in North America like to eat. Peanut butter something. Reese. That's the only brand name that I know, and I think it is the staple thing for Halloween collections. But same problem. Hazelnut paste, like chocolate paste, it's all very sticky. And I was like, well, wait a minute. What if I go the other way around? What if I do cucumber slices? So I put peanut butter on one side of the sandwich, and then I put cucumber slices on top of that, and then a bit of salt. That's it. Perfect combination. It is such a great combination because you've got that freshness, and also because it was cold, also at the convention floor, the cucumbers is still very fresh and moist, but it's not sticky. It's just water basically, but the combination with peanut butter is hearty and yummy. I was like, wow, I love this. So that was my lunch on the first day. The second day, I didn't even have time to prepare my lunch because of Mass. And so I just stepped on the train and I had no food with me. So on the central station in Utrecht, I got myself something that I ate a lot when I was a student, but I haven't since then never really bothered to eat it. And it's this one kind of general utensil store called Hema, Hema, and they sell just stuff that you use from day to day, like towels or cups or pens. I got my journals there, my bullet journals. They sell that sort of stuff. Clothes, they have stuff like that. But they're also very well known in the Netherlands because they have a smoked sausage that they sell. It has nothing to do with the rest of what they sell, but the smoked sausage of the Hema is famous. And what you do is you order, like, it's either like half a sausage, and it's very tasty. There's a lot of herbs in there, and it's cheap. It's just $2 usually. You get mustard on top of it. It's piping hot. Which, in the winter, it's so... I'm getting hungry even thinking about it. And then there is like an upgraded version where they put it in a bun. So it's basically like a hot dog, but instead of... It kind of looks like a hot dog, but it's like twice the size. It's very like a big, like these smoked sausages are are U-shaped, and you get half of that plus mustard plus a bun. I ate that, and I was able to survive for the rest of the day without eating anything, which was a good thing because on my way back, I made a mistake. It was dark outside. It was raining. It was super cold. I was in the train and heading back to Ede Wageningen, which is the train station where I needed to get off. But because it was raining, it was dark outside. I couldn't see where I was. And then at one point, the conductor of the train says, station Ede Wageningen. And of course, you believe what they tell you, right? So I get off the train, I look around, and I don't recognize the station. In the meantime, the train rides away, and I realize with some other people that I got off on the wrong station. There was still one more stop before I had to get off. So because of that mistake that the conductor of the train made, I was standing there. It was like 4 degrees Celsius. It was raining. It was cold. There's nothing. That station is in the middle of nowhere. And I had to wait half an hour in the rain for the next train to arrive. And it was already like 8:30 p.m. I was starving. I'd walked around all day. And when I got home, I still had to cook dinner. But oh my gosh, the reward when you finally get to eat. I think I made myself a pasta. And you're sitting there. I always like eat at the table downstairs, and I watch TikTok on my iPad, or I'm just chatting. I think I was chatting with the Discords, people on Discord, and they were in Valheim, and I was just having dinner at 9:00 p.m. But man, did it taste good! Like pasta. I love pasta, but when you're hungry, it's even better. What kind of food do you eat when you go to a convention? Do you have any tips? Do you bring along food yourself? What about water or other drinks? I need to learn some survival skills, because this will not be the last time I go to a big convention like that, and I need to take better care of myself.
We are on the cutting edge of technology.
Wow. Well, what does that mean?
Let's plug it in. It's going to say, hey, I see you plugged in a new device, and it's going to load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner build,
Well, all your technology stuff, it just ends in disaster.
But there is one more thing.
Oh, these big companies and these big social media platforms, sometimes it does seem to end in disaster. There's definitely been some new developments around Twitter. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything new. Elon Musk has been causing a lot of chaos and uncertainty. And last week, there was, for the first time, since he took over Twitter, there was this mass migration to other platforms. Some people are, or a lot of people actually, are going to Mastodon. I think since last week, more than 1.5 million people have migrated to Mastodon, which is not exactly like Twitter, but it is kind of similar. Other people went back to Instagram, which I don't think is an improvement, because you're still completely subjected to an algorithm that you cannot control. And so it's very hard to, it's a familiar platform, but it's not the best platform to keep in touch with people. There are also some other burgeoning new social media platforms that people flock to. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Of course, I don't think that Twitter will collapse completely, but there's definitely a shift in tone, in mentality, and already the things that I disliked about Twitter, the attacks, the kind of very harsh behavior of people, only seem to have gotten worse over the last few weeks. And it's just not a place where I feel at ease anymore and where I feel safe. This is my major reason that I went over to Mastodon, and I have to say I'm really liking it there. I don't have had that much time to kind of sort things out and start to follow interesting people. I still need to want to grow the community of people that I follow and interact with. But at least I'm glad that it works and people are able to find me there, and people do, and they do interact, and it's the whole atmosphere there is very different, even though there's this huge influx of new people. But I like that it's all about the conversation. It's not about the numbers. You're not trying to game the algorithm to get more exposure. There are no advertisements, but it's all about trying to find. It's much more geared towards discovery. You use hashtags to find people that have similar interests, and every once in a while you come across people that you really like because of what they post, and they contribute to the conversation. And sometimes you follow people, and then after a few days you're like, oh well, maybe not, and you just unfollow them. It's not really about that. It's about finding your niche, finding the group of people that you feel comfortable with. And yes, of course there are bad actors there too, but it's easier to get rid of them because they cannot hunt you down. That's the big issue with Twitter. People can look just for text strings and then out of nowhere start to attack you. This happened even this past weekend when someone started attacking me because as a priest I was offending God because on Sunday I was engaging in pagan activities, etc., etc. And I was like, I don't even know who this is. I don't want this kind of feedback. This is why I am no longer using Twitter. I don't want this. And for me, that was kind of like the last straw. I blocked that person and I was like, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm going to keep my handle there because I don't want any bad actor to take over my Father Roderick handle. But I'm not going to post there anymore. This is not a good place. And the people that I actually feel comfortable conversing with, they're not on Twitter. Well, they may be on Twitter, but I have my meaningful interactions with YouTube, with the people on TikTok, with when I do a live stream, with people on Discord, with the chat room. That's where I talk with my friends, not on Twitter. At least I've never done that for the past years. So why would I stay there if I only expose myself to more verbal abuse and attacks of people that I don't know and they clearly don't know me, judging from why they attack me and how. So anyway, it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how these things are shifting right now. And I'm sure that ultimately it will balance itself out again. But nothing lasts forever on the internet. And sometimes people will just migrate if they don't like a certain platform anymore. We have a choice. We can go elsewhere. And people are creative. They want. I think ultimately we are not made for all these culture wars and all the intolerance in a way that we try to poke each other and get in all this negativity. That may be fun for some people for a while, and they may even think that that it's important to engage in all these wars. But ultimately, we're made for peace and friendship. That's, I think, what that's how we are wired. You cannot, at least I cannot, let me speak for myself, but I cannot thrive in an environment where I'm constantly attacked or where there's always this latent danger that out of the blue, people will all of a sudden show up, sometimes with hundreds at the same time, attacking you and putting your head on a spike, like, look at this guy and what he's saying, isn't he horrible? And then everybody's, yeah, he's horrible. Who wants that? I don't want that. Anyway. In other news, voice assistants may be in trouble. Have you read that news? Like Amazon is losing millions, tens of millions of dollars on Alexa. I hope I didn't activate your devices right now, but it's a huge loss for Amazon. They thought, and this was a bit Jeff Bezos' pet project, that if they would continue to develop these devices, everybody would have an Alexa device in their home and maybe even multiple ones, that they would use those devices to order stuff from Amazon. I always found that a little bit weird. This is the major reason, even though I think that Alexa is superior to what Google is doing with their system, I just didn't feel comfortable with having all my voice assistants from a company that ultimately makes its money by selling stuff. Now, Google is also selling stuff, let's be honest. Apple is slightly more, I don't know, is not as big in this field as Amazon and Google, but still, they just want to sell their hardware. So, yeah, there's always a catch. But I still felt that Google was more universal, more, I don't know, linked to other services that I use, and that's not ideal. I hope in the future that there will be something like what Mastodon currently does for social communications. We need something like that to replace all these, Google or Amazon or all these big entities that I am not always very comfortable with, because you don't know what they do with your data. Thankfully, here in Europe, we have very stringent legislation, but still, it's never a guarantee. Anyway, turns out that also for Google, this is a business where they lose money. And they're scaling it back. They're firing lots and lots of people, which is also a bit sad, because I still believe in this technology, and I can't imagine not having smart devices in my house. I use them all the time, from morning till evening. It's so much more convenient to just ask for the latest news or ask my TV to play a certain video than sitting behind a computer and typing it in. Even on my mobile device, I don't like typing. I like to just say what I need, and then having my smart devices react as if I was on the bridge of the Star Trek Enterprise. But since these two big companies were betting heavily on these smart devices, in order to, they would sell the devices at a loss oftentimes, because they thought it would generate business. Now that business is not working for them, it's not generating extra money, or they may actually start to scale back, and you will see that the whole progress that they've made over the years is going to get stuck. So maybe this is where Apple actually is able to go beyond what Google and Amazon is going to do, because Apple has a different business model. They make money on the devices. They make money on the services. So Apple has a vested interest in getting people on board, improving their system, especially now that the two big companies that form the competition for Apple are losing a ton of money on their smart devices. Apple is not really good at losing money in general. They know how to get you to suck you into the Apple sphere, and once you're in, it all works, and they make money on you. They don't sell stuff at a loss. They always make money on you. So I'm thinking, if Apple continues to improve Siri, and they bring that technology, and they are going to do that to their AR solution, the glasses, maybe Apple will be the dominant player in the future. I never thought that would happen, because I'm not a fan of Siri. I still don't think it works. It's like 9 out of 10 times Siri replies like, oh, here are some websites. Look it up for yourself. It's basically telling me, talk to the hand. I am not going to help you. Whereas Google and Alexa usually are much more helpful. But maybe it's just because these companies were pouring a lot of money in it, and that may come to an end. So who knows? Maybe Apple is the new big player when it comes to smart devices. You know what? I need to take my DeLorean and travel a couple of years into the future, and I'll come back, and next week I'll tell you if Twitter is still around, or maybe it has been taken over by Biff. Biff Musk. It's a cousin of Elon, and Elon got bored with Twitter and all the drama, so he stepped away, and then Biff is now running the company. I don't know if that's going to be an improvement. And maybe Apple will be all over the place with their smart devices, which they already are with their phones and watches. But I think they're a small player when it comes to the Apple Pods and stuff. Oh well, time will tell. Here's my inspirational quote of the week. This is from the book that I reviewed earlier on in the show, I'm Glad My Mom Died, by Jeanette McCurdy. This is a quote from her recovery process, where often, of course, especially with the bulimia that she suffered from and anorexia, very, very hard to make real progress, and oftentimes you will slip, and this is what she says: slips are totally normal. When you have a slip, it's just that, it's a slip. It doesn't define you, it doesn't make you a failure. But the most important thing is that you don't let that slip become a slide. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening, and God bless. That's another hour and 10 minutes. Alrighty, I'm getting hungry now. How's everybody doing in the chat room? I saw that Hugo was also commenting on my when I'm filming, I'm not eating. Hugo is a cameraman I often worked with, or director also, and he knows that I have a tendency to skip lunch and to skip basically anything else than filming. So he always insists on taking a break. Yeah, that's the danger of filming myself and being alone on the convention floor. I just I can eat when I'm dead. But it was great to be filming again. I loved it. I talk about this in the walk as well. It's like on a day during a weekend like this when I'm doing my interviews and I'm getting just the most amazing conversations with people, and then just the story creates itself. It's like, that's what I do. That's what I love doing. Yeah. I think I'm going to focus more this next year on returning to documentary making. I don't know if it's going to be for television, and that would be great, but it's not the most important thing. I just feel like investing in documentaries is ultimately it's going to leave me with a better legacy than just the short form, YouTube stuff. I'd rather just be on YouTube like this, just talking and chatting, but keeping it simple, because it's just social media. In order to have a meaningful conversation doesn't mean I have to spend an entire day on creating a 2-minute video. I can do that, but effort versus return on investment is kind of out of whack. And I don't think that's the case with these documentaries. I think they really, that's my type of storytelling. That and podcasting, of course. It's a shame that most HEMA's in the UK are closed. Yeah. And the ones that were open never did the sausages. Well, that gives you another reason to return to the Netherlands from time to time. Matt Mary says, I love your documentaries. You have a knack for making these interesting. It's what I feel. When I'm filming, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. This is my thing. And I get into almost like a zone. I run around, I film, I'm happy. I'm much more extroverted when I have a camera than when I'm just walking around there by myself. Father, you just described being a Christian on Twitter before Musk. Stick with Twitter, block abusers. Yeah. Sometimes, well, especially if you have more traction, maybe for individual people that would work. But if you have, I've got like 30,000 followers or something like that. It's impossible to block. Sometimes people will make it impossible to use Twitter, especially whenever you get, exposure. The haters are there, and it does affect my mental health. I know, of course, intellectually that they're just haters or maybe even bots, but still verbal aggression is still aggression. It still hurts and it still affects me. And I just don't want to deal with that. And I don't want to have to block people in order to protect myself, because before I can block them, they will still have already been able to attack me and to reach me, and it's just not worth it. I don't want to hang out in a place where people out of nowhere start lashing out at me. And I'm not the only one who has made that decision. I don't think that Mastodon is an echo chamber. Absolutely not. It depends on how you use it. I follow topics. So I see a conversation about a topic, and then I see like, oh, that is an interesting person. Or like, for instance, I follow a lot of scientists, and I don't follow all these scientists, but every once in a while there's this guy and it's like, oh, wow, that's such a great explanation. I look at the rest of his posts and I'm like, yeah, I want to follow you. I want to engage. So everything can become an echo chamber, but it depends on how you reach out to other people. and interact with other people. And I noticed that on Mastodon, I find that much easier to do, and I feel more at ease, and I can be much more myself than I could be on Twitter, where I'm constantly, oh my gosh, I hope they're not going to attack me because of this or that. It feels like a very, very wide open forum where there are just too many people that I don't like. Well, life's too short for trolls. John works for an art company, so I see old movie posters. Cool. Peter says, there is a solution for sticky fingers. It's called, not towels. How do you call that? Like these paper towels. Paper towels. Yeah. I don't carry around paper towels when I go to a convention. Now Michiel is hungry for sausages. Yes, but they are so good. Oh my gosh, I love Hema sausages. Peanut butter and banana is also, yeah, that's a great combination too. Oh, peanut butter cups. That's the word that I was looking for. Peanut butter cups. I've only eaten them when I was in Atlanta. I think I was in Atlanta once around Thanksgiving time, and it was with Greg and Jennifer, and they had peanut butter cups. I think it was left over from Halloween. They were good, but oh my gosh. Like you eat it and you know it's an explosion of calories. Family trauma, so misunderstood and unrecognized in so many religious circles. That's true. Because, honor your father and your mother. That's always the kind of thing that they tell you. But that should work both ways. Parents should also honor their kids and respect them. And if that respect is not there, or worse, there is abuse, I don't think that Jesus ever meant that you have to stick with abusers and honor them. No, you have to protect yourself against evil and fight it if necessary. But it's a taboo topic still. It's changing, thankfully. But I feel like it's important to tell people that it's okay to be vulnerable and that it's okay to say no to verbal abuse or seek help if you're overwhelmed and hurt and damaged. And this is why it's my personal choice to not stay on Twitter, because I've been bullied for years as a child. And that's an open wound, and it can still be. Maybe some people are more tough than I am, but it's now at a point where I don't want to open myself up to the possibility of that abuse anymore, because I've been hurt too often when I was a child. And so, yeah. For a long time, I felt like I had to be on that platform because everybody else was. And now I'm realizing, well, no, it's not about the numbers anymore for me. I want to have meaningful conversations. I want to be able to talk about my faith, about the things that I love, without the risk of other people attacking me out of nowhere. And I feel that the way Mastodon is set up is gives me a bit more protection than on Twitter. But your mileage may vary. I mean, I'm not judging anyone who wants to stay with Twitter. It's just that I don't want to anymore. And that's okay. The online world is big. There's something for everyone. Margot takes inspiration from Seinfeld and called the secular observance Festivus. Festivus ends on December the 25th. While liturgical Christmas is just beginning. That's true. Absolutely. Advent calendars sometimes have pictures behind them. Yeah. Like the next year, after I got that chocolate Advent calendar, our parents bought us one with Well, that was super flat. And that's where we were like, that's not an advent calendar. That's a fake advent calendar. And there were just pictures, like a picture of a star and a picture of a snowman. It's like, dude, what's the fun in that? Jesus didn't become human to give us pictures. He became man so we could eat chocolate for 25 days. I'm talking about the child. That's not what I think as a theologian anymore, but as a child, I was like, doesn't make sense without chocolate. Scandalous. Avatar is going to be in 3D. Yeah, I hope it's going to do well. I like 3D. I like Avatar. But I'm not sure that it's going to be the same success. Skateboarding is still huge. Roller skating, not that much. That's true. Roller skating seems to come and go. Let's see. Apparently, research has shown that more and more young people in the UK now are choosing to watch things with subtitles, even if the spoken language is their own. Yeah, see that on social media also. A lot of people want subtitles on YouTube, and it's a ton of work. If you have to do it by hand, it's almost impossible. But yeah, I get those requests all the time. Where are the captions? Where are the captions? Maybe it's our attention span. I don't know. Bill and Ted. What was that again? Bill and Ted. Don't remember. Andy understood the French that I used a bit of French in the episode. Jack saw that I was live. Thank you. And just stopped to say hello. I always appreciate it. Oh my Lord, Margot, you had a burst appendix for 2 weeks? Oh my good Lord. Oh, that is just scary. I thought that was impossible. I thought you would die if it was untreated for more than a couple of hours. Oy. Well, thank goodness it didn't take you out. Oof. All right, my hands are frozen. I forgot to tell you, it's like 12 degrees Celsius in here. It's so cold when I record these podcasts. Let me see. It's even worse. I was like 12. No, I'm exaggerating. No, it's 11 degrees Celsius here in this room. I'm wearing thermal underwear. I have like 3 layers that I'm wearing here because in most of the house, the reason I cannot get the heat, and the central heating is on in this room, and it's 11 degrees, is because the ceiling is not insulated. So the attic is just as cold as outside, and that cold is then coming down in this room. YouTube does generate auto captions over time, and not always. It's a bit random. But it sometimes takes about 2 or 3 days before the captions are generated. And I guess the algorithm there too decides, this is a very popular video or big YouTuber, and they will do it almost instantly. For my videos, it usually takes a long while before there are captions. But there are solutions. I've noticed I'm using this Descript, which is very cool. They give you a transcript of your either podcast or video, so you can use that as subtitles. It's pretty good, and I've noticed that that Adobe is now doing almost the same, is offering the same functionality. So I want to check that out because apparently remember a couple of weeks ago I talked about this. They had a service that was still in beta, where they would, you could have like a very low quality recording, lots of echo, and they would turn it into almost like studio sound. Well, they broadened the scope of that particular service, and now they do automatic transcription, and you can edit it. You can edit your podcast just by reading the text and correcting the text, and it will then generate an audio version without all the ums and all the, repetitions. I think that for a lot of podcasters that would be, it's exactly what Descript is doing. So they are probably not too happy that Adobe is stealing their idea, but Adobe is a big player. Hey, is that Carlos? I think so. Dive Immersion. Hey, Carlos, welcome to the Patreon community. I love it. I did read your question about communion, and you asked me to expand upon that on the show, but I wanted to talk about Advent this week. But it's on my list, so I will get to that later on. But Carlos and I have been following each other on Instagram for centuries, I think. Okay, so Jerry wants to know if I have recovered from the weekend. Kind of. Yeah, kind of. I'm still a bit tired. So normally around, I should be running half an hour from now, but I'm not. I'm going to skip it once more because it's, my physician has said, keep in mind, running, yes, it's good for your health, but it's still, it's still depleting your energy. So balance it out. Don't think that sports is only going to give you energy. Also, you pay a price for that as well. So in moderation, and I think I'm going to listen to her advice. Peter, what is Peter writing in Dutch? Oh, so Peter wanted to know if I was recovered from the weekend. Yes, I am. All righty. It was great talking to you all. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. I will be continuing to build my little Viking stead later on, but I'm first going to make myself some food. I am hungry. All right. Ciao, ciao.